The moment Anna Hayes saw the stranger ride into Wheatland, Wyoming territory on that scorching afternoon in July of 1878, she knew her carefully constructed world of quiet survival was about to shatter into 1,000 pieces. She stood behind the cracked window of the boarding house where she worked 16 hours a day, her hands raw from lye soap, and her dress patched in so many places it resembled a quilt more than proper clothing. At 22 years old, Anna had never owned anything that could be called beautiful. Every item she possessed served a purpose, and nothing more. Her dresses were borrowed cast-offs from Mrs. Thornton, the boarding house owner who took half of Anna's meager wages for the privilege of sleeping in a closet-sized room that reeked of mildew. Her shoes had belonged to 3 other women before her, the leather cracked and splitting at the seams. Even the hairpins she used were bent and rusted, salvaged from the street after some more fortunate woman had dropped them. Beauty was a luxury Anna had learned not to dream about. Dreams were dangerous things for a woman in her position. They made you hope, and hope made the reality of scrubbing other people's floors that much harder to bear. But the man who dismounted from that massive black horse was something out of the forbidden dreams she tried so hard to suppress. He stood well over 6 feet tall, with shoulders so broad they blocked out the sun as he turned. His buckskin shirt stretched across a chest thick with muscle, and his arms as he reached for his saddlebags showed the kind of raw strength that came from years of hard living in the mountains. Long dark hair fell past his shoulders, tied back with a leather cord, and even from a distance, Anna could see the sharp angles of his jaw beneath several days' worth of beard. He moved with the confidence of a man who had faced down bears and survived blizzards, who knew exactly what he was capable of, and never doubted it for a moment. Everything about him spoke of wilderness and freedom, of spaces so vast a person could breathe without someone telling them they were taking up too much air. Anna watched him survey the town with eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Wheatland was not much to look at. A collection of weathered buildings along a dusty main street, it served primarily as a stopping point for travelers heading to more important places. The boarding house where Anna worked catered to these transient souls, men mostly, who needed a hot meal and a clean bed before moving on with their lives. She should have returned to her work. Mrs. Thornton would be checking on the laundry soon, and if Anna had not finished hanging the sheets, there would be hell to pay. But something kept her rooted to that spot by the window, watching as the stranger tied his horse and began walking toward the boarding house with long, purposeful strides. The bell above the front door rang, and Anna heard Mrs. Thornton's false, sweet voice greeting the newcomer. She forced herself away from the window and hurried back to the laundry room, plunging her hands into water so hot it turned her skin red. The boarding house took in laundry from half the town, and Anna was responsible for all of it. Her back ached constantly from bending over the washboard, and her hands had not been soft in years. She was wringing out a shirt when she heard Mrs. Thornton calling her name. The summons made her stomach clench with anxiety. Being called to the front of the house usually meant she had done something wrong, some minor infraction that would result in a lecture about gratitude and knowing her place. Anna dried her hands on her apron and made her way through the narrow hallways to the front parlor. Mrs. Thornton stood beside the stranger, her face arranged in the expression she used for guests who might actually have money to spend. "Anna, this is Mr. Orson Ryder. He will be staying with us for a few days. Make sure his room is properly prepared and bring up fresh water. Mr. Ryder has been in the mountains and will want to clean up before supper." "Yes, madam," Anna said quietly, keeping her eyes down as she had learned to do. Looking directly at people, especially men, invited trouble. But Orson Ryder did not seem to understand the social rules that governed Anna's existence. "Look at me when I am speaking to you," he said, and his voice was like rolling thunder in the distance, deep and commanding. Startled, Anna lifted her eyes and found herself looking directly into a face that seemed carved from granite. His eyes were the color of a stormy sky, gray and intense, and they studied her with an interest that made her pulse quicken in a way she did not quite understand. "What is your name?" he asked. "Anna Hayes, sir." Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "Anna," he said it slowly, as if testing the weight of it. "That is a good name." Mrs. Thornton cleared her throat impatiently. "Anna has work to do, Mr. Ryder. I am sure you want to rest after your journey." He did not take his eyes off Anna. "I have been riding for 3 days straight. Another few minutes will not make much difference." The way he looked at her made Anna feel exposed, as if he could see through the threadbare dress and the carefully maintained walls she had built around herself. She wanted to run back to the safety of the laundry room, but her feet seemed rooted to the floor. Finally, he nodded. "Thank you, Miss Hayes. I look forward to supper." It was a dismissal, gentle but firm, and Anna seized the opportunity to escape. She practically fled up the stairs to prepare his room, her heart hammering against her ribs for reasons she could not name. The room was one of the better ones, which meant it had a window that actually opened and a bed frame that did not creak too loudly. Anna changed the linens with practiced efficiency, then carried up 2 heavy buckets of water for the basin. By the time she finished, sweat dampened her forehead and her arms trembled from the effort. She was about to leave when the door opened and Orson Ryder filled the doorway. Up close, he was even more imposing. The top of Anna's head barely reached his chest, and she had to tilt her head back to see his face. "I did not mean to make you uncomfortable earlier," he said. "It is just that where I come from, people look each other in the eye when they talk. Seems more honest that way." Anna did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing. "How long have you worked here?" he asked, moving into the room and setting his saddlebags on the chair. 3 years, sir. And before that?" The question was casual, but Anna felt the weight of the answer. "I was at another house in Cheyenne. Before that, an orphanage in Kansas." He turned to look at her again, and something in his expression had softened. "No family, then?" "No, sir." "Stop calling me sir. My name is Orson." He pulled off his buckskin shirt, and Anna quickly averted her eyes, but not before she caught sight of his torso, all hard muscle and tanned skin marked with old scars. "You can look. I am just going to wash up." "I should go," Anna said quickly, moving toward the door. "Wait." His voice stopped her. "Do you ever get time off from your work here?" "I have Sunday afternoons, after the dinner dishes are done." "Good. I would like you to show me around the area on Sunday. I am thinking about staying in this region for a while, and I could use a guide who knows the land." Anna's mind raced. Mrs. Thornton would never allow it. A respectable woman did not go wandering off with strange men, and Anna's reputation was the only thing she owned that had any value at all. "I do not think that would be appropriate," she managed to say. "I will ask Mrs. Thornton's permission, if that is what concerns you. I am not suggesting anything improper, just a walk. Maybe you could show me where the good fishing spots are." Before Anna could respond, he had dismissed the subject and turned to pour water into the basin. She took the opportunity to slip out of the room, closing the door softly behind her. For the rest of that day, Anna could not stop thinking about the mountain man now residing under the same roof. She burned her hand on a hot pot because she was not paying attention, and Mrs. Thornton scolded her for daydreaming like a foolish girl, but Anna could not help herself. In 22 years of living, no one had ever looked at her the way Orson Ryder had. Not with hunger or cruelty, the way some men looked at women they considered beneath them, but with genuine interest, as if she were a person worth knowing. That night at supper, Anna served the meal to the dozen guests currently staying at the boarding house. She tried not to look at Orson, but she felt his eyes following her as she moved around the dining room, filling cups and bringing out more bread. "Excellent meal, Mrs. Thornton," Orson said when he had finished. "Best I have had in months." Mrs. Thornton preened under the compliment. "We pride ourselves on providing quality service. Perhaps you will consider staying longer than a few days. I might at that. I have been up in the mountains for near about 2 years, trapping and hunting. Figure it is time I came down and remembered what civilization looks like." He leaned back in his chair, his long legs stretched out under the table. "Met a few other trappers up there, and they told me this area has good land available for homesteading. Thought I might look into claiming some acreage, maybe building a cabin. You are thinking of settling here, Mrs. Thornton's interest sharpened. A man with money and ambition was a rare thing in Wheatland. "Possibly. I have saved up a fair amount from my furs, and I am tired of wandering. A man reaches a certain age and starts thinking about putting down roots." His eyes found Anna again. "Maybe starting a family." The room suddenly felt too hot. Anna quickly gathered up the empty plates and retreated to the kitchen, where she stood gripping the edge of the work table and trying to calm her racing thoughts. She was being ridiculous. Men like Orson Ryder did not settle down with women like her. He was probably just being kind, the way someone might be kind to a stray dog. In a few days he would move on, and Anna would return to her routine of washing and scrubbing and trying not to think about all the things she would never have. But Sunday came, and true to his word, Orson had somehow convinced Mrs. Thornton to allow Anna a few hours away from her duties. Anna suspected money had changed hands because Mrs. Thornton never did anything that was not to her financial advantage. Anna had nothing suitable to wear for a walk with a man. Her best dress was still a sad, patched thing that had been worn by at least 2 other women before her. She did what she could with her appearance, braiding her brown hair and pinning it up as neatly as her bent hairpins would allow. In the small, cracked mirror in her room, she studied her reflection and saw nothing special. Plain face, too thin from irregular meals, skin roughened from harsh soap and hard work. She could not imagine what Orson saw when he looked at her. He was waiting for her in the front parlor, looking slightly uncomfortable in clean clothes. He had trimmed his beard and tied his hair back, and Anna's breath caught at how handsome he was. When he saw her, his face broke into a smile that transformed his stern features into something warm and welcoming. "You look lovely," he said, and Anna felt her cheeks flush. "I look the same as always." "Then you always look lovely." He offered her his arm, a gesture so unexpectedly gentlemanly that Anna hesitated before placing her hand lightly on his forearm. Even through his shirt sleeve, she could feel the solid muscle beneath. They walked through town in silence at first. Anna was acutely aware of the curious looks from the few people they passed. She knew there would be talk, but for once she did not care. The afternoon sun was warm, and the man beside her made her feel something she had not experienced in a very long time: safe. Once they left the town proper and headed toward the grasslands that stretched out in all directions, Orson began to talk. His voice was easy, unhurried, and he told her about his years in the mountains, about winters so harsh that a man could freeze to death in minutes if he was not careful, about summers when the wildflowers carpeted entire meadows and the air smelled like pine and possibility. "Why did you leave?" Anna asked. "If you loved it so much," he was quiet for a moment, his eyes scanning the horizon. "I loved the solitude when I needed it. I went up there after the war, trying to escape some things I had seen and done." The mountains gave me space to heal, or at least to learn how to carry the weight of what I had been through. But after a while, the silence started feeling less like peace and more like loneliness. I realized I did not want to spend the rest of my life talking only to my horse and the occasional trapper. "You were in the war," Anna ventured carefully. "Confederate Army, though I am not proud of it. I was young and stupid and thought I was fighting for something noble. Took me years to understand what I had really been part of." His jaw tightened. "I have spent a long time trying to figure out how to be a better man than I was at 18. Anna understood that kind of regret, the weight of choices made when you had no other options. "I think surviving and trying to do better is more than most people manage." He looked down at her with something like surprise. "You are wiser than your years, Anna Hayes." They had reached a small creek that wound through the grassland, lined with cottonwood trees that provided blessed shade. Orson led her to a spot where the bank was gentle and they sat on the grass. Anna tucked her worn skirt around her legs, suddenly self-conscious about the patches and faded fabric. "Tell me about you," Orson said. "I have been doing all the talking." "There is not much to tell. I grew up in an orphanage, went into service as soon as I was old enough, and have been working at boarding houses ever since." She picked at the grass, avoiding his eyes. "It is not an interesting story." "Everyone's story is interesting if you pay attention to it." He shifted to face her more directly. "What do you do when you are not working?" The question stumped her. "I am always working." "But when you have a moment to yourself, what do you think about? What do you dream about?" No one had ever asked her that. Anna found herself speaking without thinking, the words tumbling out. "I dream about having something that is mine. Not borrowed or handed down, but actually mine. Something beautiful that I chose because I wanted it, not because it was practical or necessary." She laughed, a brittle sound. "Foolish, I know. It is not foolish." Orson's voice was firm. "Everyone deserves to have beautiful things in their life." He stood abruptly and walked toward a cluster of wildflowers growing near the creek. Anna watched as he bent down and began picking them, selecting each bloom with care. When he returned, his large hands held a bouquet of purple asters, white yarrow, and golden black-eyed Susans. The arrangement was simple but lovely, and when he held it out to her, Anna felt something crack open in her chest. "These are for you," he said. "Your very own flowers. No one has owned them before, and you do not have to share them with anyone." Anna reached out with trembling hands to take the bouquet. The stems were slightly crushed from his grip, and a few petals had fallen away, but she had never seen anything more beautiful in her entire life. She brought them to her face and breathed in their faint, wild scent, feeling tears prick at her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, and the words felt entirely inadequate for what she was feeling. Orson sat back down beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "You know what, though? Those flowers are not half as beautiful as you are." Anna shook her head, unable to accept the compliment. "You do not have to say things like that. I am not saying it because I have to. I am saying it because it is true." He reached out and gently turned her face toward his with one calloused hand. "You are beautiful, Anna. Not in the way of fancy ladies with their store-bought dresses and painted faces, but in a real way. You have kindness in your eyes and strength in the way you carry yourself despite everything you have been through. That is the kind of beauty that matters." No one had ever called her beautiful. No one had ever looked at her as if she were something precious and rare. Anna felt the tears spill over and she tried to turn away, embarrassed by her emotional response. But Orson would not let her hide. He pulled her close, wrapping his massive arms around her slight frame, and let her cry into his chest. His shirt grew damp with her tears, but he did not seem to mind. He just held her, one hand stroking her back in soothing circles, murmuring quiet words she could not quite make out but whose meaning she understood perfectly. When the storm of emotion finally passed, Anna pulled back, mortified by her outburst. "I am sorry. I do not know what came over me. Do not apologize for feeling things." Orson's gray eyes were intense as they searched her face. "You have probably spent your whole life holding everything in, trying to be invisible so people will not bother you. But you do not have to do that with me." Anna clutched her wildflowers and tried to find words for what was happening inside her heart. She had known this man for less than a week, yet somehow he had managed to see past all her defenses to the lonely, aching person beneath. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked finally. "Because you deserve kindness, and because I like you, Anna Hayes. I liked you the moment I saw you standing in that parlor trying to make yourself as small as possible. I wanted to tell you then that you did not need to shrink yourself for anyone." He paused, then added, "And I would very much like to spend more time getting to know you if you will allow it." Anna's practical side screamed warnings at her. Men did not court women like her, not seriously. They might take advantage, might make promises they had no intention of keeping, but they did not offer real affection or commitment. Yet when she looked into Orson's eyes, she saw none of the calculation or cruelty she had learned to watch for. She saw only honest interest and something that might have been the beginning of deeper feelings. "I would like that," she said softly. Orson's smile was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. "Good. Then tomorrow after you finish your work, I will come find you and we can take another walk, and the day after that, and the day after that, until you get tired of my company." "I do not think I will get tired of it." "I am counting on that." They stayed by the creek until the sun began to lower toward the horizon, talking about everything and nothing. Orson told her about his plans to claim land north of town, near the mountains where there was good timber and fresh water. He wanted to build a cabin that would stand for generations, maybe raise horses or cattle, live a simple life close to the land. Anna listened and let herself imagine, just for a moment, what it would be like to be part of those plans. To have a home that was truly hers, to wake up every morning next to a man who looked at her the way Orson did. It was a dangerous fantasy, but she could not quite make herself let it go. When they returned to the boarding house, Mrs. Thornton was waiting with a sour expression. "Anna, the supper dishes need washing. You have wasted enough time today." "It was not wasted time," Orson said firmly, "and I paid you good money for those hours, so I suggest you remember that before you scold her." "Mrs. Thornton's eyes widened at his tone, but she was too shrewd to argue with a paying customer. She simply sniffed and retreated to her rooms, leaving Anna and Orson standing in the front hall. "Thank you," Anna said. "You did not have to defend me." "Yes, I did. I will not stand by and watch someone treat you poorly." He reached out and tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle despite his rough hands. "Go on now. Do your dishes, but save those flowers somewhere they will not get ruined. I want you to remember this day." Anna nodded and hurried to her small room, where she found an old glass bottle to use as a vase. She filled it with water and arranged the wildflowers carefully, then set them on the narrow windowsill where the evening light made them glow. For the rest of the night, as she washed dishes and prepared for the next day, she kept glancing toward her room, needing to confirm that the flowers were real, that the afternoon had actually happened. True to his word, Orson sought out Anna's company every day after that. He would wait until she finished her immediate duties, then spirit her away for an hour or two, always with Mrs. Thornton's grudging permission that Anna suspected was purchased with coin. They walked through the grasslands, explored the creek, and sometimes just sat on the boarding house porch and talked while Orson whittled small figures from scraps of wood. Anna learned that he was 28 years old, born in Tennessee but raised in Missouri after his parents moved west seeking opportunities. His father had been a farmer who lost everything in the war, and his mother had died of fever when Orson was 15. He had 3 younger sisters who were now married and living in different territories, and he tried to visit them when he could. "That is why I want to settle down," he explained one evening as they watched the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "I want to build something permanent, a place where my sisters and their families can visit, where there is always room at the table for people I care about. I have spent too much of my life wandering, never staying long enough to put down roots. I want roots now." Anna understood that longing in a way she could not quite articulate. She had never had roots, never had a place that was truly home. The orphanage had been a temporary shelter, each boarding house just another stop on an endless journey of survival. The idea of permanence, of belonging somewhere, was almost too precious to hope for. As the days turned into weeks, something shifted between them. The easy friendship they had developed took on a new dimension, charged with an awareness that made Anna's skin tingle when Orson touched her hand, or stood close enough for her to feel the heat radiating from his body. She caught him looking at her sometimes with an intensity that made her breath catch, and she knew her own feelings were becoming impossible to hide. She was falling in love with him, this mountain man who had appeared in her life like an answer to prayers she had been too afraid to voice. It terrified her because she knew how much it would hurt when he left, when he realized that she was not the kind of woman a man built a future with. But Orson showed no signs of leaving. He had already ridden out to the land office and filed a claim on 160 acres north of town. He spent his days purchasing supplies and making arrangements with local men to help him start building his cabin. He talked about his plans constantly, describing in detail the house he intended to build, the barn for horses, the garden plot he would fence off to keep out deer. And he talked about it all as if Anna would be there to see it, as if her presence in his future was a given fact rather than an impossible dream. One evening in late August, after Anna had finished her work for the day, Orson asked her to take a walk with him. There was something different in his manner, a nervous energy that was unlike his usual calm confidence. They walked in silence through the twilight until they reached a spot overlooking the grasslands, where the land rolled away toward the mountains in waves of gold and green. "I need to tell you something," Orson said, and Anna's heart sank. This was it, she thought. This was where he would explain that he had enjoyed their time together, but that it was time for him to move on. Instead, he took both of her hands in his and said, "I love you, Anna." The words hit her like a physical blow. She stared at him, unable to process what she had just heard. "I know it is fast," he continued, speaking quickly now as if afraid she might stop him. "I know we have only known each other for a few weeks. But I have never been more certain of anything in my life. You are the kindest, strongest, most beautiful woman I have ever met, and I cannot imagine building my future without you in it." "Orson, Anna's voice broke. "You do not know what you are saying. I have nothing to offer you. No dowry, no family, no skills beyond scrubbing floors and washing dishes. You could have any woman you wanted. I want you." He said it with such simple conviction that Anna felt tears streaming down her face. "I do not care about dowries or family connections. I care about you. I care about the way you listen when I talk. Really listen, as if what I am saying matters. I care about how hard you work without complaint, how you show kindness even to people who do not deserve it. I care about the way you look at the world, finding beauty in wildflowers and sunsets, even though life has given you precious little reason to see beauty in anything." He pulled her closer, and Anna went willingly, resting her forehead against his chest as he wrapped his arms around her. She could hear his heart beating fast beneath her ear, could feel the tension in his body as he waited for her response. "I love you too," she whispered, and felt him exhale in relief. "I have tried to protect myself, but I cannot help it. I love you, Orson." He pulled back just enough to cup her face in his hands, tilting it up so she had to meet his eyes. "Then marry me, Anna. Come with me to the mountains and help me build a home. Let me spend the rest of my life showing you how precious you are, how much you deserve to be cherished." Anna wanted to say yes more than she had ever wanted anything. But fear held her back, the accumulated weight of years spent learning that happiness was not meant for people like her. "What if I disappoint you? What if you wake up one day and realize you made a mistake? That will not happen." His thumbs brushed away her tears with infinite gentleness. "I am not perfect, Anna. I have a temper sometimes, and I can be stubborn as hell, and I am sure there will be days when you want to throw something at my head. But I will never stop loving you. I will never make you feel like you are not enough. You are everything I need." Looking into his eyes, Anna saw the truth of his words written in every line of his face. He meant it, every impossible, wonderful word. And she realized that she could spend the rest of her life being afraid, protecting herself from potential pain, or she could take this chance at happiness even if it scared her senseless. "Yes," she said, and watched joy transform his features. "Yes, I will marry you." Orson lifted her off her feet and spun her around, laughing with pure delight. When he set her down, he kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose, before finally capturing her lips in a kiss that was tender and passionate and full of promise. Anna had never been kissed before, and she felt clumsy and uncertain, but Orson did not seem to mind. He kissed her as if she were the most precious thing in the world, as if he had all the time in the universe to teach her how love was supposed to feel. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Orson rested his forehead against hers. "We will get married as soon as possible. I do not want to wait. And then we will go to the land and start building our cabin. It will be hard work, especially at first, but we will do it together." "I am not afraid of hard work," Anna said, and Orson laughed. "No, I suppose you are not." He kissed her again, softer this time. "I am going to make you so happy, Anna. I swear it." They walked back to the boarding house hand in hand, making plans and dreaming out loud about their future. Anna felt as if she were floating, untethered from the harsh reality that had defined her entire existence. She kept waiting for someone to tell her this was all a mistake, that girls like her did not get fairy tale endings. But Orson was solid and real beside her, his hand warm and strong around hers, and when they reached the boarding house, he kissed her one more time before reluctantly letting her go. "I will talk to Mrs. Thornton tonight," he said. "Let her know you will be leaving her employment soon. And tomorrow we will go see the preacher and arrange the wedding." Anna nodded, still half convinced she would wake up and discover this had all been a dream. But when she lay in her narrow bed that night, the wildflowers Orson had given her weeks ago sat on her windowsill, dried now but still beautiful, proof that this was real. Mrs. Thornton was predictably unhappy about losing Anna's labor, but Orson paid her a sum that seemed to ease her complaints considerably. Within 3 days, everything was arranged. The wedding would be simple, held in the small church on the edge of town with just the preacher and 2 witnesses pulled from the street. Anna had nothing suitable to wear. Her best dress was still the sad, patched thing she had worn on her first walk with Orson. She was resigned to being married in it when Orson appeared with a package wrapped in brown paper. "This is for you," he said, pressing it into her hands. "Open it." Inside was a dress of soft blue cotton, simple but new, without a single patch or worn spot. Anna stared at it in wonder, running her fingers over the fabric that felt impossibly smooth after years of wearing rough, discarded clothes. "Orson, this is too much. You have already spent so much on it. Is your wedding dress," he interrupted firmly. "You deserve to have something beautiful, something that is yours and yours alone. Please, Anna, let me give you this." She clutched the dress to her chest, overwhelmed by the gesture. It was not an elaborate gown like wealthy women wore, but to Anna it represented more than just clothing. It was proof that someone valued her enough to want her to have nice things, that her happiness mattered. "Thank you," she managed to say through the tears that seemed to come so easily these days. "I have never had anything so lovely." The morning of the wedding dawned clear and warm. Anna dressed carefully in her new blue dress, braided her hair and pinned it up as neatly as she could. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she hardly recognized the woman staring back. She looked happy, she realized with some surprise. The constant worry and fear that usually lined her face had softened into something that might have been hope. Orson was waiting for her at the church, dressed in clean clothes with his hair tied back and his beard freshly trimmed. When he saw her, his face lit up with such obvious admiration that Anna felt beautiful for the first time in her life. The ceremony itself was brief, just a few words spoken by the preacher and simple vows exchanged. Anna's voice shook when she promised to love and honor Orson for the rest of her days, but his was steady and sure when he made the same promise to her. He slipped a plain gold band on her finger, and she stared at it in wonder, this symbol of belonging that she would carry with her always. And then the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, and Orson kissed her with such tenderness that Anna felt her heart might burst from the sheer, overwhelming joy of it all. They spent their wedding night in Orson's room at the boarding house, which felt slightly scandalous despite the gold band on Anna's finger making everything perfectly legal. Anna was nervous, her limited knowledge of marital relations coming mostly from whispered conversations between other women at the boarding house. But Orson was patient and gentle, taking his time to make sure she felt comfortable and cherished. He kissed away her fears and showed her with his body what his words had been promising for weeks. That she was precious, that she was wanted, that she was loved. Afterward, lying in the circle of his arms with her head resting on his broad chest, Anna felt a peace she had never known. Orson's hand traced lazy patterns on her back, and she could feel his heartbeat slow and steady beneath her ear. "Happy," he murmured into her hair. "More than I knew was possible," she admitted. "I keep thinking I will wake up and discover this was all a dream. It is real. I am real. We are real." He tightened his arms around her. "And tomorrow we start our life together. No more boarding houses and bitter landladies. Just you and me and the land we are going to build our home on." True to his word, they left Wheatland the next morning with everything they owned loaded onto a wagon Orson had purchased. Anna's belongings fit into a single small trunk, a testament to how little she had accumulated in 22 years of living. But she had the blue dress, carefully folded, and the dried wildflowers wrapped in cloth, and the gold ring on her finger, and those things felt like wealth beyond measure. The journey to their land took most of the day. They traveled north toward the mountains, following rough trails through grasslands that rippled like ocean waves in the wind. Orson had staked his claim in a valley where a clear stream ran down from the mountains, surrounded by stands of pine and aspen that would provide timber for building. The land rolled gently here, protected from the worst of the winter winds by the mountains rising to the north. When they crested the final ridge and Anna saw the valley spread out before them, she gasped. It was beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. The stream sparkled in the late afternoon sun, and wildflowers dotted the meadow in splashes of color. The mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still touched with snow even in late summer. "This is it," Orson said, and Anna could hear the pride in his voice. "This is our land, Anna. Every inch of it belongs to us." He helped her down from the wagon, and they stood together looking out over their property. Anna tried to comprehend the idea of ownership, of having a place that was truly theirs that no one could take away. It seemed too enormous to grasp. "Where will we build the cabin?" she asked. Orson pointed to a spot on a gentle rise near the stream where there were several large trees that would provide shade in summer. "There. We will have a good view of the valley, and we will be close to water but high enough that spring flooding will not be a problem." For the next several weeks, they lived in a tent while Orson began the back-breaking work of building their home. He felled trees and shaped logs, dug a foundation and laid stones for the chimney. Anna helped however she could, mixing mortar and carrying stones, cooking meals over an open fire and washing clothes in the stream. The work was exhausting, and they fell into their bedroll each night too tired to do more than hold each other. But Anna had never been happier. She was her own woman now, beholden to no one except the husband she had chosen. Every task she performed was for her own home, not for someone who paid her barely enough to survive. When she hung laundry to dry on bushes near the tent, they were her clothes and Orson's, not garments belonging to strangers. When she cooked, the food went into her own stomach, not to feed boarders who barely acknowledged her existence. As the cabin began to take shape, Anna felt something inside her settle and root itself in this land. The structure was simple, just 2 rooms to start with, but it was solid and well built. Orson worked with the focused intensity of a man who knew exactly what he was doing, and Anna marveled at his skill and strength. She watched the muscles in his back flex as he lifted logs into place, saw the concentration on his face as he fitted joints together, and felt a surge of love so powerful it sometimes brought tears to her eyes. In the evenings, after they had eaten and cleaned up, they would sit by the fire and talk about their plans. Orson wanted to get some horses, maybe a few cattle. Anna wanted a garden big enough to grow vegetables and herbs. They debated where to put the barn, how large to make the corral, whether they should plant fruit trees or if the winters here would be too harsh. "We will figure it out as we go," Orson said one night, pulling Anna close against his side. "We have time. We have the rest of our lives." By late September, the cabin was finished enough to move into. It still needed doors and shutters, and the floor was just packed earth that would eventually need boards. But there were walls and a roof, and a beautiful stone fireplace that Orson had built with his own hands. Anna stood in the center of their main room and turned in a slow circle, taking in the space that was now theirs. "What do you think?" Orson asked, watching her with nervous anticipation. "I think it is perfect," Anna said honestly. "I think it is the most beautiful place I have ever seen." He crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. "I am glad you think so because you are stuck here with me now, no going back." "I would never want to go back." She stood on her toes to kiss him. "This is home." That night, they made love in their own bed in their own house for the first time, with the firelight casting dancing shadows on the log walls and the sound of the stream trickling through the open window. Afterward, Anna lay awake listening to Orson's steady breathing beside her, feeling the solid warmth of him, and thought about how far she had come from that boarding house in Wheatland. Just a few months ago, she had been a woman without hope, going through the motions of survival without any expectation that life could be different. Now she was lying in her own home, next to a man who loved her beyond reason, surrounded by land that belonged to them. She had a future now, stretching out before her full of possibility. The first snows came in October, dusting the mountains with white and reminding them that winter in Wyoming territory was nothing to take lightly. Orson worked frantically to finish the necessary improvements to the cabin, installing the doors and shutters, chinking the gaps between logs with mud and moss, building a proper wood shelter attached to the side of the house. They made trip after trip to Wheatland to stock up on supplies they would need to last the winter: flour, salt, sugar, coffee, ammunition for Orson's rifle. Anna used some of the money Orson insisted was hers to buy fabric and needles and thread. She wanted to make curtains for their windows, quilts for their bed, proper clothes for both of them. Sewing by firelight in the evenings became her favorite occupation, and she took pride in every stitch, in creating beautiful things for their home. One afternoon in early November, Anna was sewing when she realized her monthly bleeding was late. She sat very still, counting back the weeks, and felt a flutter of something between excitement and terror. She had suspected for a while but had not wanted to say anything until she was certain. When Orson came in from checking their small herd of horses, Anna looked up from her sewing with tears in her eyes. "What is wrong?" he asked immediately, crossing to her side. "Are you hurt?" "No, I am fine. Better than fine." She took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "Orson, I think I am going to have a baby." She watched the realization dawn across his face, saw shock give way to wonder and then to pure joy. He dropped to his knees in front of her chair and pressed his ear against her stomach, as if he might hear the tiny heartbeat within. "A baby," he breathed. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Anna asked, needing to hear him say it. He looked up at her with tears streaming down his face, this strong man who had faced bears and survived wars and never showed weakness. "Happy." "Anna, I am the happiest man who ever lived. You have given me everything. A home, a purpose, and now a child. How could I be anything but grateful?" He stood and lifted her into his arms, spinning her around the cabin as he had that night when she agreed to marry him. Anna laughed and clung to his shoulders, feeling giddy and terrified and more alive than she had ever felt. That winter tested them in ways Anna had not anticipated. The snow came early and deep, piling up around their cabin until the world beyond their windows disappeared into white. The cold was brutal, seeping through the walls despite Orson's careful construction. They huddled close to the fireplace, burning through their wood supply faster than Orson had planned, but they survived. Orson hunted when the weather allowed, bringing back deer and elk that provided meat for their table. Anna learned to cook over the fireplace, to make bread without an oven, to stretch their supplies in creative ways. When Orson came in from checking the horses, his face raw from the cold and his hands numb, Anna would warm him by the fire and make him hot coffee, and they would sit together and talk about the spring that was coming, about the baby that would arrive sometime in June. As Anna's belly swelled with new life, Orson became even more protective. He barely let her lift anything heavy, insisted she rest more than she wanted to, worried constantly about her health. Anna found his concern touching even when it bordered on excessive. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time," she reminded him when he tried to forbid her from carrying in firewood. "I am not made of glass." "No, but you are carrying the most precious cargo in the world," he countered. "Humor me, please." So Anna humored him, and secretly loved him even more for caring so much. Spring came late that year, but when it finally arrived, it transformed their valley into something magical. The snow melted to reveal grass so green it almost hurt to look at, and wildflowers bloomed everywhere, carpeting the meadows in color. Anna walked through her valley with her hand resting on her swollen belly, feeling the baby move inside her, and thanked whatever forces had brought her to this place. Orson planted a garden near the cabin, turning the earth and building raised beds while Anna supervised and offered suggestions. They planted vegetables and herbs, and Orson surprised her by ordering rose bushes from a catalog, which arrived bare root and scraggly, but which Anna planted with great care near their front door. "Every home should have roses," Orson explained when Anna asked why he had spent money on something purely decorative. "Besides, you deserve to have beautiful things." In June, when the wildflowers were at their peak and the valley was bursting with life, Anna went into labor. Orson had arranged for a midwife from Wheatland to stay with them as Anna's time approached, an older woman named Mrs. Patterson, who had delivered half the babies in the territory. She took charge immediately when Anna's pains began, sending Orson to boil water and gather clean cloths while she helped Anna through the contractions. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through an entire day and into the night. Anna had never experienced pain like this, waves of agony that made her cry out despite her attempts to stay quiet. Orson stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand and whispering encouragement even when Mrs. Patterson suggested he might be more comfortable waiting outside. "I am not leaving her," he said firmly. "We do this together." Finally, as the sun was rising on a new day, Anna gave birth to a son. Mrs. Patterson cleaned the baby and wrapped him in a soft blanket, then placed him in Anna's arms. Anna looked down at the tiny face, at the shock of dark hair and the miniature features, and felt her heart expand in ways she had not known were possible. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "I am your mama." Orson leaned over them both, his expression one of absolute awe. "He is perfect." "Anna, he is absolutely perfect." They named him Thomas after Orson's father, and he became the center of their universe. Orson proved to be a devoted father, always willing to walk the baby when he fussed, to change soiled cloths, to simply sit and stare at his son with wonder on his face. Anna watched her strong mountain man turn into putty in the hands of a 6-pound infant and loved him even more. The next few years passed in a blur of hard work and small joys. Their homestead grew and prospered. Orson built a proper barn and expanded the cabin, adding 2 more rooms as their family grew. Anna gave birth to a daughter they named Rose in the summer of 1880, and then another son, James, in the spring of 1882. The cabin that had once seemed spacious now rang with the sounds of children playing, and Anna's days were full to bursting with cooking and cleaning and tending to the garden, and caring for 3 small people who needed her constantly. But she thrived on it. Every child was a gift, every day in their valley a blessing. She taught her children to read using the Bible and the few books they owned. She showed them which wildflowers were safe to pick and which plants could be eaten. Orson taught them to ride horses and fish in the stream, to respect the land and the animals that shared it with them. On quiet evenings, when the children were finally asleep, and Anna and Orson had a few precious moments alone, they would sit on the porch they had built and watch the stars emerge over the mountains. Anna would rest her head on Orson's shoulder and think about that girl who had once believed beautiful things were not meant for people like her. "What are you thinking about?" Orson asked one such evening, his arm around her shoulders. "How wrong I was," Anna said. "That day you gave me wildflowers, I could not imagine deserving something so simple and lovely. I had convinced myself that beauty and happiness were for other people, people who were born into better circumstances. And now I know that I deserve beautiful things. Not because of anything I did to earn them, but simply because I am a person worthy of love and care." She turned to look at her husband, this man who had shown her what it meant to be treasured. "You taught me that, Orson. You gave me more than wildflowers. You gave me a life worth living." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "You always deserved those things, Anna. I just helped you see what was true all along." Their valley changed with the seasons, year after year. The roses Anna had planted grew into large bushes that bloomed profusely every summer, filling the air with their sweet scent. The trees they planted when each child was born grew tall and strong. The garden expanded to include apple trees and berry bushes and herbs that Anna dried and used for cooking and medicine. Other settlers moved into the area over the years, and the Ryders became known as good neighbors, always willing to help with barn raisings or to share their harvest with families who had fallen on hard times. Orson's reputation as an honest man spread, and people sought his advice on everything from where to build to how to survive the brutal winters. But for all the community they built, Anna's favorite moments were still the quiet ones with just her family. Sunday afternoons when they would picnic by the stream, the children playing while Anna and Orson watched. Winter evenings when they all crowded around the fireplace, and Orson told stories of his years in the mountains. Spring mornings when Anna would wake early and watch the sun rise over the land that was theirs. As the children grew older and more independent, Anna found time to pursue interests she had never been allowed before. She learned to draw, sketching the wildflowers that grew in their valley and the mountains that stood guard over their home. She practiced her reading until she could move through books with ease, and Orson ordered novels and poetry collections for her whenever he went to town. Thomas grew into a quiet, thoughtful boy who loved animals and dreamed of being a veterinarian. Rose was bold and adventurous, always climbing trees and begging to go hunting with her father. James was the peacemaker, sensitive and kind, with a gift for music that revealed itself when Anna taught him to play the old fiddle Orson had bought from a passing trader. Watching her children grow and thrive, Anna sometimes had to remind herself that this was really her life, that she had not woken up back in that boarding house in Wheatland. On particularly overwhelming days, when all three children were sick or the work seemed endless, she would touch the gold band on her finger or look at her roses blooming outside the window, and remember that she had earned this life through sheer survival, through refusing to give up even when giving up seemed like the only reasonable option. One summer evening, when Thomas was 7 and already showing signs of inheriting his father's height and strength, Orson and Anna walked together to the spot where they had first discussed building their cabin. The children were with a neighbor family for the night, giving their parents a rare evening alone. They sat on the grass watching the sun sink toward the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold and pink. Orson picked a handful of wildflowers, the same varieties he had given Anna that afternoon by the creek so many years ago, and presented them to her with a flourish. "For you," he said, "still the most beautiful woman I have ever known." Anna took the flowers and laughed. "I have 3 children and more gray hair than I would like to admit. I am not the same girl you met in Wheatland. No, you are better. You are the woman who built this life with me, who gave me children and a home and more happiness than any man deserves." He pulled her close. "Every day I wake up grateful that I rode into that dusty town and saw you standing in that parlor. Every single day, Anna." She kissed him, tasting the coffee he had drunk with supper and the sweetness that was uniquely him. "I used to think beautiful things were not meant for me. But you showed me I was wrong. You showed me that I was the beautiful thing, that I had value and worth just by existing. Because you do. You always did." They stayed there until the stars came out, talking and dreaming and making plans for the future. Orson wanted to expand their herd, maybe start breeding horses to sell. Anna wanted to plant more fruit trees, to put up enough preserves that they could sell the surplus at the general store in Wheatland. They talked about their children's futures, about Thomas's dreams of university and Rose's insistence that she wanted to be a rancher like her father and James's gentle nature that seemed suited to teaching or ministry. The years continued to pass, bringing both joy and sorrow as years always do. Anna's roses became legendary in the area, and women would ride for miles to get cuttings. Orson's horses developed a reputation for being well-trained and reliable. The children grew into young adults who made their parents proud. Thomas did indeed go to university, studying animal husbandry, and returning to open a veterinary practice in Wheatland. Rose shocked everyone by refusing multiple marriage proposals, and instead claiming her own homestead north of her parents' land, where she raised horses and cattle with the same determination her father had shown. James became a teacher in a small school near Cheyenne, marrying a sweet girl who shared his love of books and music. Through it all, Anna and Orson remained the foundation of their growing family. They became grandparents multiple times over, their cabin once again filling with the sounds of children as their sons and daughter brought the next generation to visit. Anna would sit on the porch with babies in her arms and think about how impossible this all would have seemed to that girl scrubbing floors in Wheatland, convinced that happiness was not meant for people like her. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Orson surprised Anna by taking her back to Wheatland. The town had grown considerably, with new buildings and paved streets, and all the markers of civilization encroaching on what had once been wild territory. The boarding house where they met still stood, though Mrs. Thornton had long since sold it to new owners. They walked past the building, and Anna thought about the woman she had been, small and scared and convinced of her own insignificance. She could barely connect that person to who she was now, confident, loved, knowing her own worth. "Do you ever regret it?" Orson asked as they stood looking at the boarding house, "leaving all this to live in a cabin in the mountains?" Anna looked at her husband, at the gray threaded through his long hair and the lines around his eyes, at the hands that were still strong despite his 50 years. She thought about their valley and their children and the life they had built together. "Not for a single second," she said firmly. "You gave me everything, Orson. You gave me wildflowers when I owned nothing beautiful, and you called me beautiful when I could not see it myself. You gave me a home and a family and a life worth living. How could I ever regret that?" He smiled, the same smile that had stolen her heart 2 decades ago. "Come on, then. Let us go home." They returned to their valley as the summer was reaching its peak, the wildflowers in full bloom and the stream running clear and cold from mountain snow melt. The cabin looked the same as always, sturdy and welcoming, smoke rising from the chimney where Rose had started a fire to cook supper for them. Their daughter met them at the door with her latest news, talk of a stallion she wanted to buy and fences that needed mending, and Anna felt the familiar comfort of being exactly where she belonged. That night, lying in the bed they had shared for 20 years, Anna counted her blessings. Her children were healthy and happy. Her husband still looked at her with love in his eyes. Her roses would bloom again next summer, and the garden would yield enough food to see them through another winter. She had books to read and grandchildren to spoil, and a lifetime's worth of beautiful moments stored in her memory. She thought about that afternoon by the creek when Orson had given her wildflowers and told her she was beautiful. She had not believed him then, had not been able to see herself as anything other than a woman worn down by hard living and lack of opportunity. But he had persisted, had shown her through his actions and his love that she was worthy of beautiful things, that she deserved happiness and comfort and care. And in learning to see herself through his eyes, Anna had discovered something even more important, that her worth was not determined by her circumstances or her possessions or what others thought of her. She had always been valuable, had always deserved love and kindness, even when she was scrubbing floors in borrowed dresses with bent hairpins holding up her hair. The wildflowers had been a gift, yes, but the real gift had been Orson's unflinching belief in her inherent worth as a person. He had seen past the poverty and the fear to the strong, capable woman beneath, and he had loved that woman with his whole heart. More years passed, bringing the inevitable changes that time always delivers. Orson's hair turned completely silver, though he remained strong and vital, still working their land with the same dedication he had shown from the beginning. Anna's hands grew gnarled from arthritis, making it harder to sew or draw, but she adapted, finding new ways to create beauty in her world. They added a new generation of grandchildren, and then great-grandchildren, until it seemed their family tree had branches reaching across the entire territory. The cabin had to be expanded again to accommodate family gatherings, where sometimes 30 or 40 people would crowd in for holidays and celebrations. Thomas's veterinary practice thrived, and he trained younger men to take over some of his duties. Rose finally married a neighboring rancher, though she made it clear she would continue running her own operation and would not be subsumed into his. James's school gained a reputation for excellence, and families moved to the area specifically so their children could learn from him. Through it all, the valley remained constant. The stream still ran clear and cold. The wildflowers still bloomed every spring and summer. The mountains still stood guard over the land that Anna and Orson had claimed and made their own. On a warm afternoon in late summer, when Anna was 65 and Orson was 71, they walked together through their valley as they had done countless times before. They moved more slowly now, but they still walked hand in hand, still stopped to admire the flowers and watch the hawks circling overhead. They had buried their parents and friends over the years, had stood at gravesides and mourned the passing of people they loved. But they had also celebrated births and weddings and anniversaries, had marked the milestones of a life well lived. Their existence had been exactly what Orson had promised that day he proposed. Hard work and deep love, challenges overcome together, joy shared between two people who had chosen each other and never wavered in that choice. Orson picked a bouquet of wildflowers, his movements stiff but still practiced. He presented them to Anna with a slight bow, his eyes twinkling with amusement at the familiar ritual. "For you," he said, "still more beautiful than any flower that ever grew." Anna took the flowers, feeling the same flutter in her chest that she had felt the first time he had done this. "You have been giving me wildflowers for more than 40 years. Do you not get tired of it?" "Never. Besides, I mean it every time." He cupped her face in his weathered hands. "You are beautiful, Anna Ryder. You are the most beautiful thing in my world." She believed him now in a way she had not been able to all those years ago. She understood that beauty was not about smooth skin or fancy dresses or any of the superficial things she had once thought mattered. Beauty was about living with integrity, about loving fiercely and working hard and finding joy in simple things. Beauty was about creating a life of meaning and purpose, about raising children who were kind and strong, about building something lasting in a temporary world. "I love you," she said, as she had said countless times before and would say countless times again. "Thank you for seeing me when I could not see myself. I love you too. Always have, always will." They stood together in the valley they had made their own, surrounded by wildflowers and bathed in golden sunlight. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from nothing. Anna thought about the girl she had been, convinced that beautiful things were not meant for her, and wished she could tell that frightened young woman that she was wrong, that the most beautiful life imaginable was waiting just around the corner, carried on the broad shoulders of a mountain man who knew how to see what others missed. But that girl was gone, transformed into the woman Anna had become, and that was exactly as it should be. Life had taken her on a journey she never could have imagined, from a closet-sized room in a boarding house to a valley in the mountains where wildflowers bloomed, and love grew like the roses she had planted with such care. She had never owned anything beautiful until Orson gave her those first wildflowers, but in truth, he had given her so much more. He had given her himself, his love and his loyalty and his unwavering belief in her worth. He had given her children and a home and a life rich with meaning. He had given her the greatest gift of all, the understanding that she had always been worthy of beautiful things, that she had always deserved love and happiness, even when circumstances made it hard to see. And she had taken those gifts and built a life that exceeded her wildest dreams, proving that sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the smallest seeds of hope, watered by love and tended with care until they blossom into something magnificent. As the sun began to set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, Anna and Orson walked back to their cabin, to the life they had created together, to the family and the land and the love that had sustained them through 4 decades of living. The wildflowers Anna carried filled the evening air with their sweet scent, a reminder of a promise kept and a love that had never faltered. Their story was not a fairy tale with magic and princes. It was better than that. It was real, built on hard work and honest affection, on choosing each other every day, and building something lasting from raw materials and determination. It was the story of 2 people who found each other in a dusty town in Wyoming territory and decided to create beauty where none had existed before. And in the end, that was the most beautiful thing of all.